Hello and welcome to another market recap. Today is April 14th, 2025. So I guess the first thing is, for at least for the remainder of this month, I'm going to switch the format of these videos a little bit. I'm not really going to do a daily watch list like I've done in the past, where I kind of like go through what's on it. But more so kind of record the progress of my spring 2025 project that I'm working on. So this week, the intention is to essentially build a watch list every single hour, starting at 7 a.m., going through to 1 p.m. So about 7 hours a day, so 7 different watch lists. And then trading whatever is the best available setup in front of me for that given hour block. So this is something I've been tracking for 3 weeks or so now, 3-4 weeks. And what I've noticed is that if I execute flawlessly, the potential returns are incredible, honestly. The strike rate is somewhere around 60% or so in this past like 3 weeks kind of test period. I've been tracking data, and there's still losses, but there's a good bit of wins. And there's some hours where there's not a setup, and there's some hours where there is. But most of the time, there is a setup. Today, there were 2 trades that I took. It was pound dollar and Kiwi yen. So out of the total of 7 hours, I was only able to take 2 trades. I had stuff on watch 5 out of the 7 hours. So 3 setups didn't pull back to value to allow me to enter. And the 2 that did pull back to value that I could enter didn't play out. So one trade I feel good about. The other one, I think I may have forced it a little bit just because I was trying to get a trade in. I don't know if it's the setup I typically would have taken, but since I'm trying to take a trade an hour, let's see, it's the best I could find in that hour block. So that's what I did, but we'll get into it. So I guess just to recap, the goal going forward is to pretty much these videos are just going to be a recap of the trades I've taken during the previous New York session. And if I'm able to trade every single hour, then I should have roughly 7 trades. I will stop trading if I hit 4R in a day. And then I also will stop trading if I hit 10R in a week. So every week I've tracked this kind of concept. The R has been over 10R a week, usually by Wednesday. Last week it was 11.85 R at the end of Wednesday. The week prior to that, it was 10 something by Thursday, I think. And then the week prior to that, it was nearly 12 R by Wednesday. So this is the first week I'm going live with it with my own capital. Granted, I've reduced my risk to about 0.5% per position. So it's not like crazy risk or anything, but it is going to be a lot of volume, a lot more volume than I'm used to. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of growing pains come along with it. It's obviously a lot easier to paper trade, so log stuff in a spreadsheet, than it is to necessarily execute. It should be the same, and I'm viewing it as the same. But today I dealt with a little bit of emotions from taking like 2 back-to-back losses, even though as I've been tracking data, I've seen multiple at points where it's had up to 3 losses in a row, kind of using this kind of strategy of taking a trade an hour and then still being profitable in the day, because like the next following 2 trades at that point could be like 2 R trades. So you could take 3R if you took max losses, but most of the time I don't, but I have kind of lately. My average loss has kind of ticked up a little bit. Usually it hovers around 0.5, but right now it's hovering about 0.7. I took another 2 full losses today. So I'm noticing my average loss is going up a little bit, just because executing with some of these limit orders it's causing me, like, this trade that's right here in front of us is like, it's something with a live entry I wouldn't be able to take because it never really gave the entry, as you can see right here. So the overall setup I like. I think it's nice. You know, price has been pushing up for a while, and this kind of is the same on a daily time frame. Been pushing a while. It's at kind of previous highs over here. I have a clear breakdown on the 10-minute and the 2-minute, and I'm coming back for a retest. So it's a CBO, and it's also an IBO on the 10-minute. So two different strategies at play here. Everything lined up well. I don't have the pivot in here, but the pivot was in the same area. The fibs, the EMAs, it's essentially kind of like a wave 3 CBO is how I was looking at it. Maybe say this is a pullback, but I mean, if you look at the 10-minute time frame, this is really just kind of like wave 1. So the only negative thing, which is not really drawn in at the moment, that I've looked after taking this trade is that there is this kind of long-term trend line that was in place, right? That runs this whole thing. So it's the main kind of risk factor is just still playing into that main overall hourly trend. But my DDP was there. I had a good rejection candles. I had a nice breakdown. So it's a trade I'd take all day. I entered with a limit order at 0.382, stop just above 0.618, which is how I've been gathering this information. It's pretty much all my position sizing is roughly that. Enter at 0.382, stop above 0.618, and then target is a 2-to-1 at that point. So at least a 1-to-1 to lows, and then push wherever it is to a 2-to-1, as long as nothing is in between me and my target. So I had plenty of room to move to the target. It's not really much in the way. Just never really broke down. So if I was waiting for a live entry, it had this really nice trend that started to develop here after I entered. And I would have been waiting for a break of this down here at some point in this area. If I was entering something like this normally using a live entry. But it never really occurred, and it kind of just slowly pushed all the way to the stop and just kept going. So trade didn't work out. So that's trade number 1. I was at towards the end of the 8 o'clock hour for me, and it kind of pushed into the 9 o'clock hour a little bit. And then trade number 2 was actually a 4-hour setup. And it was, let's just go back. It was towards the end of the day. I had what time did I enter this thing? Yeah, I had about 1 hour left to go. I had a lot of pairs on watch that didn't really pull back. I also had hours where I didn't have anything on watch. It was kind of an abnormal day. Like in my spreadsheet that I've been tracking all this for the past few weeks there was really only 1 or 2 times a day where a trade wasn't able to be taken. Either, a loss, just a trade in general not being able to be executed. But today I found myself 5 out of the 7 hours not being able to execute a trade. So that was the first. And it was a little frustrating. So this trade is the one I feel like I may have forced a little bit. So I waited for a live entry. I did not use a pivot order on this, but the entry is still basically 0.382 and stops above 0.618. This is a IBO. So it has a breakdown. It's not severe, but it is a lower low. So we do have a trend change on the 10-minute. The 1 hour at the time of entry kind of just has this bearish engulfing. No real trend change on this yet, but if you drew in this over long-term trend line, it had just broken it on the 10-minute. So it gave me a trend change, not a great one, but granted it gave me one. And it did pull back to the value area. And I didn't love this kind of trend line that I drew in, but it is kind of the overarching at the time of entry trend of the movement. So a break of that would be a valid live entry. So I took it. So on a break of that on a 30-second time frame, when it closed below, I entered live there. And then price just kind of immediately reversed and bobbed around for a little while and then took me out 20 minutes later. And the trade really, the trade ended up playing out, but it bobbed around for the rest of the day. And then on market rollover, it actually went to target. Some of that's probably due to spreads. So the concept did play out, but my overall execution and timing of it wasn't great. But I don't know, looking at how this is pushing and even kind of the price action here, usually I want to see like this upper right-hand corner, like on the 4-hour layout, the 2-minute or the 1 hour, or the 30-second. They're my management when it comes to my time frame that I use to manage P1, P2, and P3. And usually I want to see like the 50 EMA down here and some space between that and the 200. But I didn't have that. Technically, when I entered, it had already kind of broken past the 50 EMA. So I'm not, in my mind, I'm not really able to execute anything here yet, management-wise. So I'm still looking for price to push some at this point. Usually, if the price action breaks this 50 EMA on this time frame, I'm able to at least execute P1 or do some of my risk off the table. But this is why I feel like I kind of forced it. Is this price action is a little ugly. I mean, it's just this kind of tight little trend, but it was a trade. The goal is to take a trade an hour. I needed to take a trade, and it was the best that was available in this hour slot. Granted, it was a 4-hour setup. So, and then going back to not pound CAD, pound dollar, there was the potential I could have executed P1 on the break of the 50 EMA right here. But at that point, I started to draw in this trend line. I didn't want to choke this trade by then clipping this high right here. And the way I saw it was that essentially this trend line is really the 50 EMA, so a break of that trend line would allow me to clip. So I did not execute P1 on that break of the EMA and just kind of let price continue upwards. I was anticipating price to kind of break down right here as it was kind of squeezing between this resistance and the trend. But it just broke up to the upside and took me out. So either way, 2 trades for the day, -2R. And that's all I got. So I will catch you guys tomorrow.